San Francisco's Department of Public Health is under scrutiny after at least 300 employees have come forward to admit they're moonlighting on the side without disclosure or authorization. This comes after our media partner, the San Francisco Standard, uncovered that a health department director had a side gig at a nonprofit that actually receives funding from the health department. Joining us live now to explain how this unraveled is our media partner, the San Francisco Standard's reporter, David Sjostedt. David, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So how did all this come to light? It started with your investigation into the director of jail health services, right?
Yeah, so it started a little over a month ago. We received a tip that this nonprofit called Baker Places had asked the city for a $4 million bailout and had threatened to close about 5 of its programs. And I started digging into the tax returns and financial documents and saw Lisa Pratt, who's the director of jail health services, on one of those documents. And it struck me as odd because Lisa Pratt works for the city and the city funds Baker Places. So I looked into that, and it turned out that she had never had that second job approved by the city's Department of Human Resources. And so that just prompted a whole lot of other questions.
What was Pratt's explanation?
Pratt said that she was working 20 hours a week on the weekends as an on-call doctor consultant type role, and that she was, quote, sleeping with her phone on. And that's how she managed the seemingly implausible schedule.
All right. Did she address this, Baker Place asking for the $4 million bailout? And was anybody able to draw a direct line from her involvement in both places and whether they got the funding?
Not there. She says she didn't know anything about the financial problems of the nonprofit.
Okay, so let's talk about what the rules actually are, right? California is a right-to-work state. People are allowed to make a living. And, well, first, let's just talk about, she made a lot at both jobs, didn't she?
Yeah, so she makes over $400,000 for the city, and then was drawing over $100,000 for Baker Places as well.
Got it. Nonetheless, I imagine the rule doesn't involve how much you're actually making. It's got to be something involving whether there's a conflict of interest or disclosure. Walk us through what the city's rule actually is, at least in that department, with regard to taking on a side job.
Right. So that's actually what struck my interest in this initially, is that part of the city's rule is that if you are doing a job that interferes with the job that you have for the city, then you're not allowed to take it. Mm-hmm. And that's why this schedule just seems so implausible, that she was working 20 hours while also running one of the city's major health departments. So that's one of the things. And then the other thing is if she was to be referring patients or giving contracts to the nonprofit. And we haven't had any evidence of that yet. But we have found that she was working on the clock for the city for this nonprofit, and her role actually requires her to be on call 24/7 for the city.
All right, I see. Okay, so what about this discovery? It led to kind of the unraveling and the discovery of 300 others who kind of came forward?
Yeah, so basically that led a city attorney investigation, a Department of Public Health audit. Several supervisors have called for hearings. And one of the things that came out of it was the Department of Public Health started vigilantly reminding people that they're required to seek approval for these jobs. And I found out yesterday from the Department of Public Health that they had received 300 new applications just since Pratt resigned from her nonprofit job in the last month. So there was 300 people that had previously not been authorized.
All right. I mean, just look, if the job that you want to take on, you disclose it, you ask for authorization, and it's a job waitressing or driving for Uber or door dashing, I mean, would that be approved if there's no conflict of interest?
Yeah. City employees are allowed to take second jobs. The thing that has frustrated so many people is that there seems to be a culture of them doing it under the table. And a lot of these people make a lot of money. We don't know exactly who these people are yet. We're working on that, but at least in Lisa Pratt's case, she was making a good amount of money from the city.
All right, perhaps this is the next phase of your investigation, but do you know if other city departments have similar problems? I don't want to say problem because maybe it isn't, but, are they an anomaly, the health department?
Well, the health department definitely has the most people working second jobs, and that may be because it's somewhat common practice among doctors and nurses. But the second most people working second jobs is in the Public Utilities Commission with 18 people as of that's what we know now. So it's kind of a far jump from 18 to over 400 in the Department of Public Health.
Right. Do you know if they're talking about an investigation? I mean, you mentioned some of the supervisors are pretty mad about it, into whether any of that side job was done on company time or the time of the city, if you will.
For Lisa, we have confirmed that that was done on time for the city because her city job description requires her to be on call 24/7. And we've also uncovered some public record emails that show her responding to issues for Baker Places on, say like a Tuesday at 3 o'clock.
What about the 300 others? I suppose that is yet to come because that's so new. But what's happened to Pratt? She has one job now? Does she quit one of them?
Yeah, she had to resign from her nonprofit job. She is still working for the city as far as I know.
Is there an investigation into any ethics violations with regard to her main job?
The city really keeps those things under wraps because it's a personnel issue. So I'm really not sure the status of that.
Okay. What do you expect will happen to the 300 others who have now stepped forward to apply and said, hey, I actually have a second job as well?
Well, they're attempting to follow the rules now. So I think it will be interesting to see how many of them actually have those applications approved. There's something, about 40 of them have already been sent back to gather more paperwork for those applications, but time will tell whether how many of those are legitimate.
All right. I mean, just as an isolated thing, the headline is unnerving to some people enough. But when you take a look at the whole, looking at all the headlines coming out of the city, how does this play into the perception right now?
Yeah, I think it really struck a nerve with people because the health department is obviously the lead agency in charge of the humanitarian crisis that we see on our streets. So it is frustrating to people that these people might not be fully devoted to the job that taxpayers are paying them for.
All right, David Sjostedt, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your report.